We're excited to have so many participants here and ready to learn with us today. We're going to be talking about English language learners and a little focus on math during our new normal. I am Lizette Roman. I'm a 6th grade bilingual teacher in the Brentwood School District. Dr. Nakora is here with you. Go ahead, Dr. Nakora.
Hi, I'm Nakora Plaka. I am from Hunter College, where I work in our math education department. So I work with teachers on teaching math, and I do some research on how we can best support our students in learning math.
Helen?
I'm Helen F. Carpitas. I am an ENL ELA teacher on Long Island. So I get to give a, the outside view of the math view of everything.
And we have Roshi.
Hi, everyone. My name is Roshi Jolly. I live on Long Island. I teach actually remotely now as everyone else, but I work in the city before the pandemic. But I'm really interested to be part of this group today, so thank you.
Thank you. Before we get started, we want to encourage you, if you are not already a member, to join the New York State TESOL Association of Teachers to help you better network. Join us for all the webinars. It's only $20.20 for this year to join, $20.20. So if you go to nystesol.org, you will find here on your top right-hand corner where you can click join and join to be a member. And then if you go to resources and you click under resources and you click on webinars, you will be able to earn your CTLE hours if you are a member. So please take advantage of that. I can say that, genuinely say that it has tremendously helped me. Kelly is the one who encouraged me to join, and it has made a huge difference in my professional life. So I encourage all of you to join as well. So what is on our agenda? First, we're going to be discussing planning lessons with SIOP. And secondly, we're going to give a sample math lesson. And we'll wrap it up with an open discussion led and moderated by Roshi. So when you're planning any lesson, it could be a math lesson or any lesson, we were collaborating and we discussed how important Maslow's law of hierarchy is. And so when you're doing your planning, please keep that in mind. And then also keep in mind all those wonderful components that we were taught that are part of the SIOP model when we were in school. And we're going to go forward and go a little bit more into depth with that. So first, we would like to discuss our students' well-being. In Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it is so important to first focus on the physiological needs of our students. When we call our students, are we first asking, how is your family? Do you have everything that you need? How is your family doing? Do you know that we still are offering food at the local schools and whatnot, and see how you can help and what your resources are. And are they safe? Do they give them that encouragement that they are still a part of the community, that they belong, that there's a school, teachers, their friends are supporting them during this time with the distance learning? And if we encourage them and we support them this way, they are more likely to be engaged and buy in, and we hope to buy in into our lessons.
So I just want to say that the link that was on that slide has been put in the chat. So if you want to go there, it's already there.
Perfect. And so let's dig in a little deeper and talk about SIOP. This is a research-based model. It's validated. It's been developed by Jenna Chivadia, Mary Ellen Bog, and Deborah Short. It stands for Sheltered Instruction Observation Protocol. Now, the SIOP model has 8 components. The first is lesson planning. So when we are planning for our lessons, what are our objectives and are we hitting those content and language objectives? And how are we relaying that information to our students during the distance learning time? And we'll go into that. We'll model some of that for you a little bit later. Second component is building background. Third, comprehensible input. Fourth, strategies that we're using when we're using distance learning. Interaction, are we providing opportunities for our students to interact? Practice and application. 7, lesson delivery. And 8, review and assess. So I'm going to go back, and I want us to think about, as we're lesson planning and as we're doing all this distance learning, what are some questions we can ask ourselves when we are planning the lessons? Because I think ultimately what we want to do is focus on giving our students quality lessons versus quantity. It's not really about how many lessons are we posting up right now. We think it's more important to think about what is the quality of lesson. So first question we can think about is, what is it that we are teaching, the content, and how is it that we're going to make sure that our students are understanding those objectives, and how are they going to show us that they're understanding? So that would be our language objective. And where we're building background, we can ask ourselves, how will I connect with what students already know? So we have to be in tune, kind of like what they're into right now. I'm sure we're all different grade levels, but for example, my son, his speech therapist has done a phenomenal job with keeping in tune with what he's into. He used to be into Beyblades, but right now he's really heavily into fire trucks. And he didn't want to listen to her at all with her lesson when she was talking about Beyblades anymore, because he's done with that. But the moment she mentioned fire trucks, he was all in. So we want to make sure we're connecting with students with what they already know and build on that. And how are we doing that? Are we using videos? You know, what is it that we're doing to build that background and the vocabulary? Comprehensive input, how will I adjust so students will understand? So I really, when I saw this list of questions, this really hit me, because it said, how will I adjust? And I think that's so important. It's not just about our students adjusting to the distance learning. It's about how are we adjusting and changing some of our style with planning our lesson to better help them understand. Strategies, how can I teach students strategies to help themselves? And interaction, are students in groups where they can interact? So we will give an example about, we're going to go into some of the applications we can use to provide them the opportunities to interact, but we know how important interaction really is for students to actually learn what is it that we want them to learn. We know that just reading and staring at the computer really isn't going to be helping them to learn long term. And then moving on to practice and application. And like I mentioned before, less is most definitely more right now, and quality versus quantity. So we want to really make it meaningful. And when we're delivering these lessons, how are we keeping them engaged? And last but not least, did our students learn? Are we stopping to reflect and think, do I think my students really learned from this lesson, or did I just throw something out there and just check it off, a checkoff box? What feedback am I giving them so that they know what they've learned or how they can grow from this experience? So I thought those were excellent questions to ask ourselves as we are planning and thinking also for the future of what's to come when we start the next school year. So I'm going to let Eleni go ahead and go forward with the comprehensible input.
So I'm not going to go through each of these because a lot of them are pretty self-explanatory. But as far as wait time, I remember my first year teaching, I was always so nervous. And I was like, oh, the first kid raised their hand, I'm going to call on that kid. And my AP was like, well, you know, you got to wait. And I'm like, but I get excited. And so, you know, he said, you know, have it done. So, oh, I want to see 5 hands. And then when you get 5 hands, then slowly keep increasing it. Now, unfortunately, with remote learning, we don't have that luxury. And also we have kids that tend to dominate the conversation. So if you do use Zoom, you can have the kids do a little hand raise and say, I want to see more. And the kids are still able to see all the, the hands that are there. I'm going to jump down to gestures because I'm Greek, and they say that if they chopped off our hands, we wouldn't be able to talk anymore. So just using your gesture so that the students are understanding it. I'm lucky to work in a district where majority of my students speak one language, which is Spanish. So what I try to do is find the text that is translated. So the students have access to the work. They are able to read whatever book we're reading in their native language. And I've been lucky enough to find the side-by-side of Animal Farm. So the students get to actually read paragraph by paragraph along with it. Unfortunately, it's not as common in other languages, but then what I'll try to do is provide summaries that are in more simple English. So that brings us down to avoid jargon. When we use too much jargon, we lose the kids. So we have to simplify things. And again, that kind of goes with paraphrasing. So instead of saying, or you could ask the students, analyze the significance of characterization, and then paraphrase that. Why is characterization important? So that the students know what you are asking, but you are showing them in two different ways. And it's a form of scaffolding. So by the time June comes around, you could kind of take away the paraphrasing, and the students are able to stand on their own a little bit.
And I like to add to that, Eleni, I really love that you mentioned paraphrasing, because when it comes to math, and they get these very complicated word problems, our students see that and right away, and I remember myself as a former English language learner, I would just say, well, I can still pass this without doing the word problems. I'll just do the multiple choice. And my students will do the same thing. They'll look at those word problems and say, I'm done with this. They won't even attempt it. But what I've taught them to do is have them thoroughly analyze one word problem. We can take 30 minutes on a word problem. Going back to quality versus quantity, we can give just a few word problems, 1 to 3 word problems, and just the lesson can be on having them paraphrase what they've read and summarize it to demonstrate understanding without even having to solve the problem. So that's a lesson in its own when you're teaching math or any subject. So putting it in the students' hands as well is a great thing to do.
We were talking about building background knowledge. And so we can't do these word problems in math if we don't understand the background information that goes with it, or you can't understand what is happening in history if you don't understand anything that led up to it. Or in English, I did a whole pre-reading on communism before we started reading Animal Farm or dystopian societies. So you have to have these visuals and build this background information so that the students are understanding what you're doing.
Most definitely. And the last thing I wanted to actually mention about comprehensible input is just most likely the modeling, the demonstrating, and the step-by-step directions, and keeping those step-by-step directions simple, clear, and just making it without too many steps. 1 to 3 steps should always be sufficient for them before they do their activity, and having them repeat those directions back to you before you release them to do whatever it is that they're working when you're meeting with them in their distance learning.
Yeah. I'm going to add in one more. I love everything you guys have said. I just wanted to add in for math the abstract and concrete one, because I think there's been a lot of work done on how kids learn from concrete to representation to abstract. And so thinking about, kind of modeling with an actual physical tool, like taking a word problem and modeling it with a physical tool, and then moving them to modeling it with a drawing, and then writing a number sentence. And that can be done differently across different grades. But I think that's a really good way to think about structuring your lessons and helping them with word problems, in addition to all the suggestions you all had.
And I'm so glad you said that, Dr. Nakora, because we'll talk about how Flipgrid can be the perfect tool for that. So I'm excited, yes.
Lizette, sorry to interrupt. Are we going to be able to share this PowerPoint?
I believe so, yes. This is going to be up on the YouTube channel.
Okay.
When we're currently recording, and I'm sorry, I should have mentioned this prior, that we are recording this webinar as we speak. And so it will be posted on the YouTube channel.
But
So
we
we're
also have, I'm sorry, we also have the roster of all the participants. So if anyone wants the PowerPoint slides shared and you're willing to do that, we can email it to them through that
Perfect.
roster.
Awesome.
Awesome. So let's just discuss. We'd love for everyone to discuss some of these points now in the chat. Please share one component of SciUp that you feel you've consistently incorporated in your math distance learning lessons. And then, so I'll give us time to do that. And so here's a sentence frame if you'd like to use it, like we would do for our students. I have consistently included blank by. So we'll give you all a moment to do that. And if you'd like, you can talk about maybe something that you feel that you need to still incorporate using any of the SciUp components, something that made you realize, hey, maybe I can still do a little bit of this or a little bit of that. So one person shared that they are using comprehensible input and specifically sentence frames and using sentence frames for, when they're doing writing during the distance learning. So that's awesome and that's fantastic. And another person mentioned, Karen mentioned, including wait time by working with students to take their time. I think wait time is so important. And I'm gonna go ahead and move on. All right, so some websites that we can be using, apps, platforms to help us better connect to SciUp are listed here. I thought it was just good to create a chart so that we can feel good about the lessons that we're preparing, and we look at these apps and we say, okay, this is a good app, and I know it's a good app because, for example, GeoGebra, it offers manipulatives, it's less abstract, and it also helps kids, not only that are English language learners, but are also special needs, because we are using those manipulatives. And we haven't gone too much into that, but I think it is important to remember that many of our students who are English language learners, because they're already getting those services, sometimes they're not identified as having special needs. So I think that's also something important to remember. And so these are great, great math tools. Mathagon is one that I discovered that I love. It looks like it's still up and coming. They don't have everything in just yet, but please check out Mathagon. Again, there are manipulatives, and it was an excellent site to help your students differentiate. Another way that we can be presenting is by creating PowerPoints with a video, a voiceover, or a Powtoon. There's also Doodly that is just up and that people are using and students are using as well. Desmos and as well as Gizmos are also math websites where you have graphic calculators, and again, there are manipulatives, less abstract, more concrete. I don't know if Dr. Nakora wants to talk a little bit more about Desmos.
I wanted to share Desmos with everyone because I think it's a great resource. Particularly, they have some stuff for elementary, but mostly middle and high school. And what's really nice is it's a free graphing calculator, and we know some students might not have access to a graphing calculator right now at home because they might have used one in school, or they might not be able to get to the store and get one. So it's for free, and you can go on and you can calculate anything on there. And then they also have some really engaging activities. They have a marble slides activity where you kind of play around with an equation of a line and it becomes a game. And there's lessons people have created. It's kind of really nicely shared by a bunch of different educators. So I thought that was a nice example of something that, one, kind of fills the need that we might be missing at home right now, and then also gives us some very concrete activities we can do with kids in a topic that sometimes we can't think about what it looks like to be concrete in algebra or something.
Yes. I was so excited when you shared that resource with me, Dr. Cora, because I can most definitely make use of that. And anything where a game is involved, I'm finding for it to be very engaging for my students who are middle schoolers. And so this is very difficult to motivate a middle schooler. So I'm excited to use that one. And many of us know about Padlet. And what I love about Padlet, like we mentioned earlier, we need to encourage interaction between our students, and Padlet offers that. I want to mention creating your own video. And the thing I want to highlight about creating your own video is that when you create your own video, we have control over the enunciation, the pronunciation, the speed at which we are speaking, so that our students, and the relia that we're using, so that our students can really take in all the information, and we're in control of that comprehensible input. Oftentimes I find videos, and yes, I can use those videos from YouTube or wherever else, but it's not really always meeting my students' needs, my English language learners' needs. So I'm really a fan of creating my own videos. If you would ask me a year ago, I would have said, you're crazy. I don't get on social media. I will never show my face anywhere on the internet. And here I am now doing it. And I do it both in English and in Spanish for my students. And I think because they have that relationship with you, they're more likely to be engaged. Actually, I don't think. I know that there are some, there is some research out there about retention, and they're more likely to be engaged and retain the information because they have that relationship with their teacher. So recently I learned that Khan Academy has all the math available in all the different languages. So here's the one for Spanish, and that saved me as well. I would like to move on to Flipgrid and Kahoot. Flipgrid and Kahoot will give some examples how that works, but those are also phenomenal. And Flipgrid, again, encourages student discussion, interaction, where the students can paraphrase using listening and speaking and engagement. Kahoot has been a lifesaver for me and for my students. My students are texting me and sending me messages, Mrs. Roman, when are we going to play Kahoot? So, and they are able to interact with Kahoot, and they motivate each other and cheer each other on when they're playing. So I think those are phenomenal apps to use. So for distance learning, classroom management, I just wanted to briefly go over that. Some things that were very important are creating predictable routines. So what specific days during the week are we meeting up? And what days are we having due dates for assignments? Making it consistent so that our English language learners know what to expect. And by making them predictable, they can put their energy towards learning the content as opposed to organizing themselves. So and I do want to go back to, again, some of our kids that have difficulty with executive functioning skills or have special needs. This is and it's not just English language learners, or both. If we take some of that worry away, they can focus on the content. So by having that structure, it really helps our students. And use consistent formats for assignments and worksheets. And however, we should be giving choice. So for example, we can tell our students, you can create a PowerPoint presentations, you can use Doodly to do your presentation, or you can just simply do a writing assignment or a hands-on art project, however it is that we want to, like we would normally do in the classroom. We're still able to do it distance learning, not to limit ourselves. And then provide opportunities for leadership. We can still provide opportunities for leadership to do a group activity and say, who wants to take lead on this? Who's going to contact their buddy, their classmate, and hold each other? Who's going to make sure that we're holding each other accountable? So providing leadership opportunities and group work. And I've assigned most recently my students to having a partner, again, to support each other, call each other, and holding one another accountable. Something else that we have mentioned is to have we could do a math word wall or any kind of word wall. We know word walls are so important for our students. So we can do a digital word wall where they have access to all the vocabulary words that they've learned over time for different units available, and wherever it is that you have in your Google Classroom. If you're on Microsoft Teams, it could be in your in your class notebooks on Teams. Classroom notebook on Microsoft. And the last but not least with our distance learning classroom management is providing that feedback. How are we providing the feedback, and what's the format? Something that I find to work wonders and that's very motivating for my student is to use that praise sandwich, where you start off with the praise and tell them what they did great. And then even if it's something minute, we got to find it, and then give them some constructive criticism, some feedback that's going to help them grow, and then wrap it up with something positive again, telling them that you're proud of them and where you saw them really putting effort. So going back to consistency, something that we discussed prior to doing this webinar was that we feel so many of our students feel very scattered. Us as parents, sometimes we feel scattered with work and helping, and then helping your own children. So we talked about what are the different ways we can help our students, and one of them is by providing a schedule. So I provide a weekly schedule for my students. This is a sample, so they know what to expect. And so this is Monday through Friday, and this is a sample schedule that I've used that also demonstrates that we're actually differentiating here, because I work with Group A, Group B, and Group C. These are all students that are at different levels in math. And so, for example, on Monday, I will meet up with my students around 12 o'clock in the afternoon, and they're expected to, prior to meeting with me, to have already completed their Edpuzzle. And then we will go ahead and debrief at our meeting. And then after we debrief and I check for their understanding, they'll go ahead on their own and complete a forms document where they get automatic feedback on doing some of their practice problems. And I only will give them 1 to 3 problems. And then by Tuesday, they might do a flip grid. Wednesday, we'll meet up again. And then when they meet up again, the same format. We're trying to, again, stick to the same format every time. By Thursday, I give them that time to meet with their buddy, check in with their buddies, see if how they're feeling, to see what they might need help with, and to discuss some areas that they feel that they need to cover before we meet again on Friday. So this is like a sample schedule. Another thing I did with my colleagues when we started the distance learning is to get a bigger picture of what our students' workload is like. We're all working on one document, a workable document together, and we're posting it once a week, Monday through Friday. Every teacher, because I'm in the middle school, every teacher posts what assignments they have for the students Monday through Friday, and then you get the big picture, what the workload is like for the student. This is something also possible that you can work with your colleagues.
So Lizette, we have a question.
Yes.
Did they have prior knowledge? As far like my students, we've been using Google Classroom all year. But I started using Pear Deck and Flipgrid, so I had to teach my kids how to use these apps. But how about you, Lizette? Did your kids have?
I'm so glad this came up. Thank you so much. I take advantage, when this all started, my students did not ever use Teams prior to this, which is the equivalent of Google Classroom. So what I did, I spent a large amount of time at the beginning when my class would meet on Teams. I would share my screen, and I started to show them how to navigate through Teams. And then every time I introduce a new app, it's just like what we would do in the classroom. I give them a lesson, sharing my screen, showing them how to navigate through a new website or app that I might use for an assignment. So when I was going to have expected my students to use Flipgrid, on that Monday, this is a perfect example. On this Monday, I will tell them, hey guys, we're gonna try something new. We're gonna use Flipgrid. Everyone, I'm gonna share my screen with you, and I'll go to the Flipgrid website. I'll show them, or through Teams, where they have to click to get onto Flipgrid, and I will walk them through how to complete their assignment from A to Z before even using it. And we test it out, and sometimes it's difficult for them, and sometimes they don't succeed, but then I see the ones that aren't using it, I might give them a call or send them a message, where are you having difficulty, how can I help you? And then you see them getting on board when they find, again, and also as well, this is why I think having a buddy is so important, and pairing them up with somebody they're comfortable with, because they can also, if they don't feel comfortable talking to us, they can talk to their peer.
And Lizette, you only teach math, correct?
I actually teach I teach ELA, HLA, home language arts with native language arts, Spanish literature, and as well as math. But I spend most of my days teaching math, yes. Okay, I'm gonna move on. So just a little point to talk about how we're doing. I'm currently using SurveyMonkey, but you can do this with your students. This is a check-in time. So when you have them with you, you can take a little survey, and through SurveyMonkey or polleverywhere.com. I'm very familiar with SurveyMonkey. So today, if you like, you can go ahead and get out your phone, go to your camera. And when you go to your camera, you just hold your camera up to this QR code.
And the link has been put in the chat as well.
Yes, and you can click there and just answer these 3 questions. The first question is, which platforms, applications are you using? Which work for you and which do not work for you? And as you do that, I'll give everyone another second to scan the QR code. I'll show some of our results.
And someone asked how you create a QR code.
Awesome. So I don't know how to create my own QR code for assignments that I've created, but I know that many of these applications and many of these websites like SurveyMonkey, when you're creating a survey, it'll give you the option to create a QR code. It'll say it and you just click on it. So and then I just copied and pasted it right over here to this PowerPoint.
There are also many free platforms where you can create QR codes. I will find one and throw one in the chat. Yay. That I normally use.
Yay. Okay, so I think I can collect responses now.
As you're doing this, what's really nice about SurveyMonkey too, if you use it as a way as like formative assessment, is if your content in math right now covers anything about statistics or bar graphs, there's some really nice ways you can use this to talk about collecting data. And even as you're showing them, this many people got this right, talk about the math behind, doing a survey or collecting things. So it kind of serves 2 purposes. It can, one, help you collect data, and then also help you talk to them about what statistics and math is behind that. And even right here with this bar graph, we're going to see.
Awesome. That's a great point. So everyone can see the screen. Can everyone see the screen with the graph? Great. So as we see here, it looks like a lot of us are fans of Kahoot, and I have become the biggest fan as well as of Kahoot. My students love it. And it looks like many of us are using Padlet. And I see that not many of us are using Edpuzzle. So actually, I'm really excited about that because I am going to go into depth with Edpuzzle and how we can use Edpuzzle. So that's great. And as well as Flipgrid. So that's perfect. No, that's great. So here we go. And it looks like many of us are familiar with YouTube and Padlet. That's great. Let me go back to our PowerPoint. So now that we see we're not as familiar with Edpuzzle, let me show you how amazing Edpuzzle is. I'm so excited. Let's go through a math lesson together. So going back to SIOP, we're going to, we're going to model and demonstrate. So I'm just going to click here on my Edpuzzle. Students do need to create a login with Edpuzzle. On our end as educators, we have to create a class with Edpuzzle, and automatically Edpuzzle, if you see up here on the top right-hand corner, it says content. You can search for content, but if you're creating your own math videos or you see something on, if you create your own math videos and you post it up on YouTube, you can embed your video into Edpuzzle. Now, what is Edpuzzle? Edpuzzle is basically a website that you can use, have the students watch a video, but why I love it is because students are forced to pause at certain points of the video where you want them to stop and to reflect and to think and to answer questions. You have control over that. When you're creating the lesson, you choose at what point they are going to have to stop during the video to stop and think and reflect as to what they have learned. So I'm just going to quickly show you like a minute's worth of my Edpuzzle with a math lesson. As you watch it, I want to go back to that comprehensible input and think about what did you notice? Did you notice me repeating? Did you notice if I gave the students wait time? What did you notice about the video? And note that here on the far right hand corner, these are the questions that the students I've created for them to have to respond to. There is one open-ended question, a multiple choice, another multiple choice, open-ended, and another multiple choice as they watch this video. And every single one of these points here are your stopping times for them to stop and respond. So here is an example of a math lesson. Hello, all my amazing students. This is Mrs. Roman here, educating you with love. And today we're going to be going over lesson 1 in chapter 10, finding the area of a parallelogram. So our objectives, our content objective. I can find the area. So I'm going to just stop and remind everyone how important it is to note the language and the content objective in every lesson that we do. Give the background vocabulary. And so here I included an open-ended question. And if the student wants to re-watch the video, they can click on re-watch. Or if they are an advanced student, they already know this good stuff, they can click on skip. Your language objective. I can justify my strategy for finding the area. Eventually go towards the left, and on the right side, if it goes up, it'll go all the way towards the right. They are not parallel. They're not going in the same direction. Another vocabulary word. So the next question I ask my student is, what is the formula to find the area of a parallelogram? It provides the screens right here for them. There's a visual for them. The words are highlighted. I also do this, like I mentioned before, in Spanish. I do a separate video in Spanish with the questions. You can type them in Spanish. It's multiple choice or open-ended. Let me go back here. Bye. I hope you're all doing wonderful. Today, I want to pose a bit of a challenge question on you before we even start the lesson. I want you to think about what you might already know about certain quadrilaterals. So let's look at this shape. The shape is, as you know, is a rectangle. How do you find the area of a rectangle? How do you find how much space is in this rectangle, the area? You're right, you have to multiply the length times the width, or the base times the height. Yes, you're absolutely right. So let's go ahead and do that. Area equals base times height. So and so again, I asked them, how do you find the area of a rectangle? And what I was doing here is, like we've mentioned, Eleni mentioned, and we've mentioned, I was building them up to then ask them how to find the area of a parallelogram, because without knowing how to find the area of a rectangle, you can't find the area of a parallelogram. And as Dr. Nakora mentioned, as if they were to continue to watch the video, I actually use manipulatives in the video to show them the two pieces, how they can actually break apart a parallelogram. So that's just a quick example of how Edpuzzle works. I'm a huge fan. It does take a lot of time. It does take a lot of work. However, we have to remember we are planting seeds. And right now, all our hard work is going to pay off, because this is the wave of the future. So we will be using these lessons again, and we'll be able to actually focus more on our students when we have them in the classroom with us, if we have them looking at these lessons online. So let me go back to our...
I just wanted to build on that, because it goes back with the idea of quality over quantity. We can upload, you know, at the beginning of remote learning, I'll admit, I was like, all right, this will be a time filler until we get back. But now we don't know what next year holds, and we might have to really work on perfecting these digital lessons so that our students are getting the most out of it. But I just wanted to interrupt for 2 questions. The first one, can you remove the disable enable skip option to prevent students from skipping everything and having a field day?
That's a great question. Unfortunately, I haven't tried that, but I'm sure most likely there is. We'd have to play with it. I don't know if anyone else knows the answer to that.
I know the answer. It's yes, you can prevent skipping.
Yay.
And the next question is, what program do you use to record yourself and add text on the screen simultaneously?
Well, this is so funny because you learn as you go, and this is actually really exciting. As stressed as we are, it's exciting that we are learning things as well, and we're not stagnant, right? So playing, I was playing with the PowerPoint. What I do is I create my PowerPoint. I also then create a video. I have just simply uploaded my videos on YouTube, and that's been that. But with what you just saw, I had a PowerPoint created. Then I embed my YouTube video in my PowerPoint. It gives you the option. And once you're doing that, there's an option to draw on your PowerPoint while you're playing your video when you're reviewing it, and you can write on it. So that is what I do. And once I'm done doing all of that and I create my PowerPoint with the videos embedded, then I have a Mac and I use QuickTime Player. And that is so that I can do a screen recording of what's on my computer and a voiceover if you want. So there are a lot of steps, but it's QuickTime Player that allows me to do a screen recording with my Mac. I know that online there are other screen recorders available, as well as on our phone, but that's how I did that. And then once I have that recorded, I can then load it up onto Edpuzzle. So again, it's a lot of work, but I think it's well worth it at the end. So after I've provided the lesson for my students to preview, and to see, and posted it all up on, you could do it on Google Classrooms, your Teams, or on YouTube. Then what you do is you can review their scores, see how they did, and then if you meet with them with a face-to-face conference, all your class, you can play Kahoot. And Kahoot is so exciting for them. I'm not gonna have us play today. We don't have that much time, but Roshi mentioned this is so important for us to know. When you wanna set up a Kahoot, you go to kahoot.com as a teacher. You create your account. They have plenty of content if you don't wanna create something, or if you do wanna create something, you can. And then thereafter, to have your students have access, they can just use their phone so that they go to kahoot.it. You'll provide them with a PIN. Once they put in that PIN, it's time to play. And they use their phone to put their answers, and all the answers come up on the screen, and they absolutely love it. I think you all know about Kahoot, so I'm gonna move on. This is Flipgrid. I want to show you how to use Flipgrid with math, or you can use with any subject. I always model what I expect prior to using Flipgrid, providing the language and content objectives once again, and only 1 to 3 directions in both languages I like to do it in, and providing sentence frames so that helps guide them when they are creating a video on Flipgrid. So I want to share a recent math assignment. My students had to learn about how to find the area of a parallelogram. We went through all the motions, I do, you do, I do, we do, and now it's time for you do. And I made it exciting. I told my students it was a contest, and they were allowed to team up and do it with a buddy. Some of them are embarrassed and shy, don't want to show their face on camera, and they didn't even care that you could cover your face with an emoji. They just didn't want to be on the camera and have their voice heard. So I told them as long as they worked on the project together with their classmate, one could be the one to do the video and the other one can just work with them on the actual math problem. My students had to create a math problem, and they had to then teach their peers how to find the area of a parallelogram. So those were their specific instructions. With Flipgrid, you can upload a video to review whatever it is that you need them to know for background knowledge. Here, I put the simple directions, both in English and Spanish, and the time frame that they had. But I really want to show all of you what a fabulous job that they did, and how you're giving them room to shine in their own way. And there is no limit here. So I would like to please show you one of my students' work. He is a transitioning student. He, with his language proficiency is transitioning. He normally in the classroom only speaks Spanish in the classroom, but check him out.
Parallelogram. A parallelogram is an area which is length times width. So my length is 64 and my width.
So he went on to explain the problem. I gave him feedback here. And that's why and you can give them also a score and give them some comments and email it back to them. Then I moved on to my other student, Alessandra. I thought this was an excellent example of how, again, Flipgrid just is great for all students of all different levels.
Para encontrar el área de un paralelogramo, primero tenemos que tener en cuenta dos cosas. Primero, la altura del paralelogramo y luego la base.
So this student, she didn't feel comfortable enough to explain everything in English. So she explained it in Spanish, but she was comfortable enough to write it all out on Doodly in English, and she uploaded the Doodly video from an app onto Flipgrid. I never told her to do this. She took it upon herself, and then this is her now modeling for the rest of the students who then came after. So it was very exciting because here they are interacting and they're learning from one another. So Flipgrid is absolutely phenomenal. I just love Flipgrid. And quickly, forms, we have that on Google Classroom and on Microsoft Teams. Again, when we set the assignments, it's so important to give them those 3-step directions, have them have access to videos to reiterate whatever it is that you've taught them, the notes available, the directions in English and Spanish, and then slowly scaffold their questions until they become much more complicated. And I only gave them 10 questions here to make sure that they understood the lesson by the time that we were done with learning how to find the area of a parallelogram. I'm going to pass this on to Roshi. She's going to.
That was fantastic, Lizette. Really.
Thank you, Roshi.
Wonderful. I love Flipgrid.
Yay.
And you've used it really, really well. Just so you know, I don't work K through 12, but I'm learning so much from teachers right now.
Yay.
And I see that they use very different and I think the pandemic has made us more creative. Like you said earlier, we as teachers have to learn the apps first, then we model it, then we get our students to use them. So I just want to open this up because I work as the outreach coordinator, and I actually have over 100 students, and they're actually adult students, but they have kids who are stuck home with them. So one of my biggest challenges is, devices, internet, content, and they're always complaining about their teachers and how they cannot access something, or the parent needs a device to do their work. So somewhere we use Google Classrooms, other places we use Google Sites. We incorporate all the points that you said, videos, PowerPoints, and that. And so I think that I would love everyone to share what some of your challenges and experiences are with the feelings of anxiety or obstacles, and what are some of the solutions. Like for me, listening to you, Lizette, I really feel that the first slide when you talked about check in with them, how are they doing? How are they feeling? I said that's the affective filter. And for me, I love using WhatsApp groups to create the classrooms because that's a great way to have a community, and they can post emojis and tell us what they're doing or why they couldn't show up. The brother got sick or the mother's in the hospital. So having this master's hierarchy of needs is something that we are using. I didn't realize what we were using, but we are. They feel, in fact, I tried recently to move. One of the classes became really big because we normally try to do 10 to 15 on Zoom. But then it became too much with the breakout rooms when we got to 25. So when I tried to move some of the students over to another class session, part B, they said, no way, we love our teacher. We love learning new things. And I think for them, the digital literacy part of it has become even more important. For adults who are going back into the workforce, the moment that, we have restrictions that are easing. Number two, how do I help my child with Google Classroom? This particular teacher is so mean. She gives so much homework to my daughter, 4th grader. We get these kind of questions. So I'm always battling with what can we do? Those are my anxieties and the teachers. But the flip side of this pandemic is good points are that it has created a huge community because everyone's in lockdown. Number two, they're all open to learning new apps and digital literacy. And you have them almost like really connected as a family, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So as you said, we do not know what's going to happen in the fall. So we want to continue. And what I've done is started something new called rolling admissions. So anyone can join. Because in a community-based program, as you know, there's a high attrition rate when we were on site, but online there isn't. There could be though down the road when jobs open up. Therefore, we keep having people join in. And they all come with different needs. So I think one of the questions I'll throw out to one of you, maybe you can answer it, is what do you do in a situation where a parent is in a lockdown situation, and being that she's a second language learner, ESL learner herself, how can she help her child? How can she communicate with the teacher? Is there anything that you would offer?
I'm going to leave it open. Are there any others that want to contribute to that want to answer what recommendations they can make?
And we're also eyeing the group chat so we can, we're reading off anything that we see in there if you're too shy to speak out.
One of the biggest needs, for example, is for adults to learn English to help their students, to communicate with their students, not only in the home language, but with their teachers. So would it be worthwhile that parents get a quick lesson on Google Classroom or Meets or whatever it is? Is that something that's even teachable?
I think that's such a valid point that we should, like we do normally in regular school year, we've had like a parent school where they come in and learn how to use the computers or how to get onto eSchool. We use eSchool for their grades, their parent portal. So we can do the same thing, just online. So I think that's a great point. We can most definitely think about maybe today you're going to have a lesson together with your parent, schedule it in advance.
Mm-hmm.
And today we're going to learn together with mommy and daddy, or mommy or whoever our guardian is, and make that their lesson for the day. I think that's such a good point, especially going into this upcoming school year. We need to educate our parents.
We do. Yeah, thank you. That's very helpful. We just started incorporating read alouds that you could do with your child, or a parent wrote to us saying, oh, they're reading Red Riding Hood. What is that about? The genre they don't understand. So we have to kind of unpack that for them and then create a video and then read aloud. And then, wow, Eureka, the parent and child are both on the same page.
Yes.
One of the things we thought about.
That's neat. I have Christine, who is mentioning how can we help our students with not rushing through their assignments. And I think that's such an important question because our little ones want to go outside and play right now, or they're just over it.
Yeah, I'll try to. I just went to the grocery store and the gym, so I don't really want to show my. Hi, Roshi. Roshi's laughing at me. So, hi. So yeah, a little boy just this morning said to me on Remind, and I said, I don't think they're really practicing the skills. I think they're rushing. And he said, oh, Miss Eback, I do my work so fast so I can go out and play. And I said, I was right. So, you know, and these are the kids who fortunately everyone's healthy in their homes and they have food and everything's, you know, so that's my concern. You know, the other kids, you know, obviously our concern is making sure their families know where food pantries are and whatnot and devices and everything. But these children who are, you know, able to be provided for, I'm like, oh man, I want him to play, but I want him to process the information. And it's not like old school, it's 21st century learning where we're processing information and taking the time. I mean, all right, fine, they're only 8, but you know, I teach elementary school mostly. So I don't know, I want to try to figure out a way and cultivate a way to make sure he knows that to spend a certain amount of time.
Well, I feel like the Edpuzzle is great for that because it forces them to stop. You have to stop, you have to think about it a little bit, and then you can move forward.
Is it true that across the districts it's very different? Like some of the parents say they have due dates for the assignments, and the kid is struggling to meet that deadline. Is this true? I don't know. Is it different from school to school?
Yeah, I would say that it's completely different. Like I know in the DOE, administrators are actually popping into the Google Meets or the Zoom classes, whereas my chairperson will just ask me what I'm working on and leave it at that. But I think if we continue in September, things will change. You know, maybe there will be mandatory live sessions. And then, you know, the kids can't rush off because you gotta stay there.
Yeah.
But I know that some of my kids, they just turn their iPad on, they mute it, and then they're not there. And I know this because I end the session, they're still there for 10 minutes. And I'm like, hey, what are you doing?
It's so tough But I think that just like in our regular classroom, we have to think about how we're breaking up our energy. You know, we have to put energy towards those kids and try to find solutions for them and do our part and make those extra little phone calls and say, hey, I noticed, so they know that we're on top of them. But also keep encouraging the ones that are being positive and that are doing what's expected of them and going above and beyond. And I have to reiterate this, having them have a buddy, because they don't want to hear it from us anymore. I think that once I put my students with a buddy, it really, really was helpful, because I paired them up. It's like with my, you know, you could do high, low, you can do like.
Nice. I love that idea.
And they all have
Are
different
they
shapes.
communicating through Flipgrid? How are they communicating, your students?
So they can communicate through Teams, and I know some communicate through Snapchat and whatever else it might be. I don't hold them accountable necessarily, like, oh, I want to see how you're holding whatever discussion. But I think it could be a cool idea to do that. I just had my student, when they knew they had a project to work on together, I said, hey, I have one student who no good with executive functioning skills, is not doing a lot of homework assignments. But I said, hey, I have this contest going and you're really, really good with social media and you're really good with using all these apps with animations and whatnot. I said, why don't you team up with Justin that really knows the content, and he'll help you a little bit with the math and you help him with the digital side. So he felt empowered by that. And I think that it also takes a load off of us, because it's like, okay, you are helping one another, holding each other accountable. And I think that reaching out to some of our kids who want that leadership role is exciting for them. And it kind of helps us as well with making, being efficient with our time.
So do you mean that the leader in the body reports back to you as a teacher? Or?
So their final product is what I will see. Okay. And when we have a conference together, we'll touch into how did it go. If I don't hear back from the student at all and I have paired them up with a buddy, I mean, just like in the classroom, it's like, okay, well, I need to call mom. But really, I did it with this most recent project with what you saw on Flipgrid. They were so excited. They were really into it, honestly. Yeah. And they don't like showing their face on the camera, but they were motivated. I have a colleague who told me she sent pizza to a student of the week for whatever it was. So sometimes, like we do in the classroom, a little bit of reward helps.
Oh yes, definitely. Yeah, I can see you put in a lot of work, Lizette. I mean, when I'm listening to all of you, it's like, wow. I'm looking at Serena's chat. She says she's 28 students, and my goodness, and she's exhausted. Oh, wow.
We're so tired.
Yeah.
We are also tired.
I don't know if we are more tired because it's an online situation.
I feel that we're just we're starting like if we were first year teacher again. We're having to recreate, even if we have lessons, we're having to upload them onto whatever platform we're using. We're having to write down the directions. I mean, this takes time.
Yes, it does. Kelly put up a good thing, free parent webinars. Nice.
Yes, I just wanted to throw that in there, and this is just a link to one of them, but the Auburn is offering a 4-session workshop in multiple languages focused on parents. So parents have to register, but it's free to them, and it really addresses so many concerns, one of which, of course, is supporting their children in these digital learning platforms. But they're offered in Spanish, Chinese, Urdu, Turkish, and Haitian Creole right now. We have fabulous speakers coming in. It's all free, and we've had a really great response. Only the first session has taken place so far in Spanish and Urdu. So the rest of the sessions are all still open for registration, and it's a great resource if anybody wants to tune in themselves or share that with parents in their districts. I put in the link for the Spanish one that's upcoming, but if you follow that link, you'll find the other ones as well.
Thank you so much, Kelly.
Thank you. That's great.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I think we most definitely have to just encourage parents to not be scared and to be willing to, try all of this new stuff as well. So thank you, everyone. Here's our information if you want to contact us. Our emails or our Instagram, Twitter. Please feel free to jot that down, take a screenshot. And don't forget that if you're not a member yet, you will not regret it. Please join our Teachers Association, the New York State TESOL. It is really phenomenal, and we have our November conference coming up, and we're going to be continuing doing webinars throughout the summer. So please stay tuned and please become a member. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you.
This is so good.
Thank you.
Ellie.
I know
Have a
you
good
guys.
one.
We'll see each other soon. Enjoy your evening.
Have a nice one. Rest up.